Big question this week in the Big 12 is who's number 2? Not who's number 1. Who's number 2? We've got a game for that. That is Utah and Arizona State. Monster game in the Big 12. One of the biggest left, I think, on the season. These are the two teams that have the second and third best DraftKings odds to win the league. Of course, your projected league champion right now would be Texas Tech, or they are the favorite, a heavy favorite, minus 120 at DraftKings to win the Big 12. So Texas Tech is the second highest favorite to win any conference out there. Number 1 being Miami. So that is one way, I think, that's as an aside, one way to look at the Texas Tech situation in the Big 12 is it is very similar, very, very similar to what Miami has emerged as in the ACC, where like we've seen enough games now, we've seen enough teams lose, we've seen how flawed a lot of teams are, and then you just look at one of these other teams and how they look on the field. They just look bigger, faster, stronger, more complete, dominant. That's Miami in the ACC. That's Texas Tech in the Big 12. And so it's not surprising to me that those two are like the overwhelming favorites to win those leagues. And it is also interesting. This could be a whole segment, man. I maybe should bottle this up and keep it, because those Texas Tech and Miami have both been like perennially kind of underachieving teams. I mean, Miami more so than Tech, just because the expectations have been higher. But these have been perennial underachieving teams for a while, and so I think there's still some hesitancy from some to be like, can we trust this? But look, I trust it with Texas Tech, man. I'll tell you that much. That doesn't mean I don't trust Arizona State and Utah to be teams that could put a scare into them at some point. All right, Arizona State will get its shot next week. Utah got one shot, didn't take it. Maybe they would get another in Arlington if they can win this game. But for Utah to win this game, you guys know what Utah has to do. This is probably, I think, the wildest stat going in the Big 12 right now. Utah has not won a Big 12 home game since entering the conference. The team that had the back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances was as confident as any could have possibly been coming into this league, right? Bordering on cocky, depending on who you're talking to in their fan base. They are now into October of their second year in the league, and they have not won a Big 12 home game. Is some of that how the schedule breaks out? Their first game this year at home happened to be against Texas Tech? Sure. That's still a pretty dubious distinction there for a very proud Utah program. And this is not going to be easy, man. This is not going to be easy at all. You could definitely see how this streak would then extend again. And next week, they're not playing at home. They're going to Provo for the Holy Wars. This could really get extended a while here. Utah needs this win for many reasons. They obviously need to avoid a second loss if they want to really stay in the Big 12 title game hunt. Right now, it becomes tough if you drop this game. But they got to get that monkey off their back at home. I know that is one of the toughest places to play in the league. It's nothing against the environment, which was, by all accounts, elite for the Texas Tech game, but they didn't have it. Team didn't have it. I also think there are parallels here in the fact that both teams have had to rebound since a disappointing loss early. I know it's only been one game for Utah, but they dominated West Virginia. Meanwhile, you've had a couple of at-the-gun, exciting, thrilling wins over Baylor and TCU for Arizona State. These teams have rebounded nicely and have appropriately set up what I would call like battle for number 2 here right now. Who is going to be the primary challenger to Texas Tech? Couple of interesting matchups here. I mean, it's always the Utah offensive line is always a really front and center matchup because they are so damn good. It didn't go well against Texas Tech, which was the jarring thing there, and a part of why I do fully believe in them being head and shoulders above the rest of the league. You got 2 top 20 NFL draft prospects per PFF on that offensive line for Utah. They're going up against a team that Arizona State at least has a good run defense, allowing just 78 yards a game on the ground. A little more mediocre in terms of the pass rush numbers. So we'll see there, what Devin Dampier is able to do. But the key for Utah, I think, is like they need to be able to run the ball. Dampier, as we have seen, if you can make Utah one-dimensional like Texas Tech did, like Dampier will struggle. But if he can run the ball, work off play action, get comfortable, you're going to have a much tougher time with him. Frankly, one of the things, and PFF's college show does such a good job breaking this stuff down, but it has keyed me into what I think is the most interesting aspect of this game. If you're someone who's nerdy into this, wanting to watch what's going on, it's Utah's defense playing 60% man. They're in man coverage 60% of the time, which is number one in the country by far. It was pointed out that like number one in the country is usually like in the 30s. Utah plays man 60% of the time. That's a confident, aggressive defense. I don't know what they do against Jordan Tyson. You might have to amend that because Jordan Tyson has the best PFF grade against man coverage of anybody in the country. And it doesn't take, look, I could have told you that without really looking at it. I mean, you just look at any highlight of his, he's just smoking a guy one-on-one. TCU had him 4th and goal trying to lock down that game, and Jordan Tyson still finds a way to get open on somebody, just making a sick move to get open in the end zone in a condensed space, right? You don't have much room down there by the goal line. Doesn't matter. The guy's going to find a way to make plays. So how do you neutralize that? Jalen Moss is supposed to be back for this game as well for Arizona State. It was expected this year to be the number 2 receiver. Unfortunately, has had to deal with a bunch of injuries. That could really help. But that's really, to me, like the matchup within the matchup in this game. Jordan Tyson is fun to watch. The other problem is if you play a bunch of man, it's pretty easy to get burned by the quarterback run game. And that's the best asset that Sam Leavitt probably has to bring to the table is his athleticism. And if you let him get going and making a bunch of plays with his feet, you're going to be in some real trouble there. So, a crazy game. I think this is a really good game. I'm stoked for it. Utah trying to snap the winless streak at home. Both teams trying to stamp themselves as the prime challenger to Texas Tech. And then you start looking at if you're peeking ahead at Arizona State's schedule, they're one of these teams that has a pretty rough stretch coming up. Next 3 after this one for Arizona State, they've got Texas Tech, Houston, and Iowa State. So if you lose this one, you could see how a slide would happen pretty quickly, starting with next week, Texas Tech. So the narrative could flip very, very quickly on your season. I want to say, and the PFF guys, I heard them say like, well, hey, I got to side with the home team here. It's pretty close, so I'm just going to go with the home team. Again, I say, guys, that has not been a good strategy. That has not been a good strategy with Utah. That has not been a good strategy with them since they entered the league. And it was frankly where I was leaning in the Texas Tech game, and we saw how that went. I don't think Arizona State has that kind of a talent gap or physicality gap on Utah. So it is much different, but we shall see. Rubber meets the road for BYU. That's the story of BYU Arizona to me. BYU has a very rough stretch. In fact, reading some of this, reading some of the coverage of this, and then listening to Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator of BYU, I mean, he said this may be the toughest stretch in school history. In program history, BYU is saying this could be the toughest stretch. Here it goes, all right?